My name is Rebecca Lyford. This is September 9th, and we are recording at the NBA headquarters downtown. It's being conducted for the Legal History Project of the Nashville Bar Association. And will you state your full name?
Jimmy Glenn Creecy.
And what's your birthday and where were you born?
My birthday is December 17, 1947, and I was born in Athens, Alabama.
Okay. Do you want to tell us about your family a little bit?
Well, I'll talk about it. I'm a seventh generation Tennessean. My father's people came from England to Virginia in the 1600s, and they settled in Giles County. Lackey is the county seat, in about 1809. And my mother's people likewise were from England and settled in Virginia in the 1600s. And they moved to North Alabama, around Huntsville and Athens, Alabama, around 1818. When I was born, my parents were living in a little town called Elkton, Tennessee. It's 3 or 4 miles from the Alabama state line. And so when I was born, my mother's people were from Athens, and she went down there, and I was born in Athens. And a couple of days later, I guess I was back in Elkton. And my folks lived in that area for 3 or 4 years, and then they moved, bought a house in Pulaski, Tennessee, and that's pretty much where I grew up.
Now, I have something here about depleted soil in Virginia. What was that?
Well, I think a lot of people had moved all through the East Coast. The soil had been depleted primarily for the cotton growers in most of those, but also for the tobacco growers in Virginia. And that's what one impetus for the westward movement was, to get more fertile ground to farm on. I'm not sure that my mother's people left for that reason, but I suspect my dad's people probably came down to Giles County when it was nothing much there. But anyhow, that's my lineage. My dad, he was born in Giles County, and he was in the Navy in World War II. And when he got out, he raised cattle and worked for the railroad. And my mother, I have 2 younger brothers, and she pretty much stayed home and had some part-time jobs and endeavors, but that was her goal in life, was to take care of her boys. And she did a pretty good job, I think. So, but I went to Pulaski Elementary School and Giles County High School. And one note, I remember when I was in the 7th grade, they were having overcrowding in the schools. So I had the 7th grade in an old building that was used as a hospital in the Civil War. And you can still see the blood stains on the floor. But anyhow, I graduated in 1966, and it was really a nice, almost idyllic place to grow up in the 50s and early 60s. Of course, played outside a lot and fished and swam in the creeks and rivers. And I played some football and some baseball, and was in the Scouts, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts.
And did you go to Boxwell?
I did go
That Boy Scout camp?
a couple of times, yeah, sure did. And then when I was in high school, I worked downtown at a department store for a sort of part-time for a couple of years or so, and I was mainly the shoe salesman. So that's what I did. And
So do you know a lot about shoes now?
a little bit. I'm sure they've changed. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Okay. And then you went to UT and graduated in 1970?
Now, I graduated from Tennessee in 1970.
Yeah.
I graduated from high school in 1966.
Right.
And
And how did you choose UT?
well, I was a big football fan, and they had some good seasons, especially in the 50s. And I had several friends of mine that had gone to UT. So I knew some people up there, and I thought it was, for what I could afford, I thought that was probably the best option for them at the time. And I enjoyed it. Pulaski was about 5,700 people when I was living there. And I went to Knoxville, and the student body was 25,000 people. So it was a bit of a shock, but I loved it up there. I really did. Made a lot of friendships. And I worked in the summer. I'd come back to Pulaski and worked in some factories there.
What kind of factories did they
Well,
have?
one was a shock absorber factory. I worked there for a couple of summers, and then there was what they call a rubber plant that made rubber wheels for lawnmowers and bicycles and toys and things. Worked there, but I remember my first year working it. The pay, I worked at night shift, of course, and I made $1 and a dime an hour.
Mhm.
And I remember my check would be for a 40-hour week. After they took out Social Security and tax, it was $30-something. But that was, that was a lot more money then than it is now.
Yeah.
But then my last year, summer before I graduated, I worked with an accounting firm that summer up in Knoxville.
Arthur Young.
No, this was Henry and Company. It was a small firm, and I was an accounting major and had an economics minor. And I was a pretty good student. I was president of the accounting society, our fraternity, they called it, and was in their honor society, which is the business honor society is called the Beta Gamma Sigma. It's similar to the liberal arts Phi Beta Kappa, but I was a good student. I studied and picked it up pretty handily.
So did you get your CPA? I mean, I know you don't get CPA from school, but you studied accounting and then you got your CPA.
Yeah, I took the test for the CPA when I was a senior at UT, and 4 different parts. I had a very difficult exam, and I passed all but one. And then when I got out of graduated from Tennessee, I really wanted to go to law school, but I didn't really have any money, so I took a job with an accounting firm in Atlanta. It was Arthur Young. And of course, now I think they merged with Ernst and Young, but it was one of the big 8 firms.
Right.
And I mainly did auditing work, which I really didn't enjoy very much. But anyhow, I worked there for a little over a year, and then I went to law school at Vanderbilt. And the requirements to get a CPA, you had to pass the exam and you had to have 2 years of experience. And so I had the year experience, and then when you were in graduate school, they'd give you credit for a year. And I got my CPA license in 1972.
Okay. All right. And then what was your when did you graduate from Vanderbilt?
I graduated Vanderbilt Law School in 1974.
Okay. And then what did you do after did you like Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I did. I met a lot of friends, and even to this day, a lot of friends, and I really enjoyed it. My second year in law school, I clerked with a small firm downtown Nashville. It was at 4th and Union. It was called Stevenson, Lackey, and Holman. And they did a lot of work for savings and loan, First Federal. And they did some title insurance defense work, and then they represented Travelers Insurance on a lot of stuff. And then they offered me a job there after I graduated.
And what did you think of that job?
Well, I really, it was really good experience, because these men that were there, they were from the old school. They were highly ethical, and I learned an awful lot from them. I think a lot of people that go into firms or into government, for some reason, they don't get that aspect of the law. These men were, the high character and their integrity. And
so I've heard the name Lackey. Is that Joe Lackey or
it's J.G. Lackey.
J.G.
Yeah,
Joe Lackey's father or something? Were they
I
not
think they
related?
were cousins.
Oh, okay.
But anyhow, there were a lot of good lawyers there at the time. I think we had maybe 8 lawyers. And in Nashville at that time, I remember some of my classmates, went to work for Bass, Berry and Sims, and they had like 16 lawyers.
Mhm.
And that was probably the biggest law firm in town in 1974. So it was a very established firm. Mr. Stevenson, who I guess is one of the founders, he graduated from law school in 1913.
Oh, my goodness.
He got licensed in 1913, and one of his summer jobs was helping build the Hermitage Hotel.
Oh,
And he was a Politico at one time, but he would tell me stories of things that happened in Nashville, especially with the legal profession. I remember one thing he told me. He said back then, a lot of lawyers went to court armed.
no kidding.
That's right. He said, I guess it was just a different era back then, but he was a fine man. And then J.G. Lackey had graduated from Vanderbilt in the 1930s, I believe, and he served in World War II in the Pacific and the Navy, and I think he got some medals for some of his work. He was a fine man. And then Tom Holman, he was associated with him for several years. He taught me a lot. He was a fine man. And there were some other lawyers I worked with there. That, we had a pretty good group. John Rowe was one of our lawyers, and Nancy Corley and Bob Lewis and Jim Lackey, who was J.G.'s son, was there, and Kirk Waite and Bill Bozeman. So they had some really good lawyers there. And
then you stayed there how many years? 2?
well, I clerked there for 2 years, and then I stayed there for 2 years. And in 1976, this firm did a lot of work for S&L title searches and
S&L is a savings and loans for you young people.
Yeah, savings and loan. And that was a pretty lucrative source for the firm. And I did a lot of real estate work, the foreclosures, and I did everything from drawing up pensions to probate. I did divorces, and just did all kinds of different suits, defending or bringing them. So it was really, really good experience. But there was a piece of legislature passed the federal Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act of 1976. It was called RESPA. And it really affected the ability of the law firms to either be on the board of some of their clients, like a savings and loan, or they had, as far as their fee they got for the title searches, not really impacted it negatively. So at that time, and one of the hardest things I ever did was when I left that firm, because I really thought a lot of them. And I had an opportunity to go to the Attorney General's office. And I had run into a classmate of mine who was with the Attorney General's office. And
Who was that?
Chip Ames was his name. And so I went up there, and Ray Ashley hired me.
Who?
Ray Ashley, he was the Attorney General on the spot. And apparently they had a big backlog of revenue cases. And of course, that was sort of something I could do. So I did that. And they were in the Supreme Court building at that time. And
Was it like the 3rd floor or something?
yeah, it wasn't, of course, there weren't that many lawyers at Attorney General's office.
Right.
And I think when they hired me, I think I was the 15th, maybe 12th or 15th lawyer. And they were going to move out of the Supreme Court building to the old IBM building on James Robertson Parkway. And the day they moved.
Is that 450 James Robertson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The day they moved was my first day of work with them. And I just had my second daughter. My second daughter was born too, by the time I started. And but I enjoyed, did the work with some fine lawyers over the years.
So let's see, when you first started, what division of the AG's office were you?
Well, there really wasn't the divisions they have now. Well, there was criminal, where they did the criminal appeals. And then there was the civil side, which is where I was, that did the tax work and all the other civil type of cases. And I basically what they would do, they'd have like 2 or 3 lawyers that would handle revenue cases and other stuff. And then other lawyers would do, representing boards or insurance or just all the different aspects. And later on, it got to where it was a lot of legislation created more lawsuits. And so and then of course, just the demand in for legal work, population growing and eventually they added more, but I started out as an assistant attorney general. And before long, I was a senior assistant attorney general. And then I became a deputy attorney general. And I was associate chief deputy. And then I was chief counsel for special litigation, was my final position. But there were some really good lawyers when I came in there. People like Hayes Cooney, who I really thought a lot of. He was the chief deputy. Bill Hubbard, Bob Littleton, Joe Haynes, Larry Lewis, Barry Kraft, David Weed, Everett Falk, and many, many others. And I eventually served under 7 attorney generals, I believe. So I don't know if that's a record or not, but it's a lot of attorney generals, and they're all
So
a little different.
So you were there from September of 76 to December of 2005, is that right? Now, there's something about your blood pressure went up and the THP drove you to Baptist? What was that story about?
Yeah, I was working pretty hard. I was overseeing, I think we had 11 lawyers, and my caseload was, I had over 100 cases. And I was trying them myself, plus overseeing other lawyers and writing opinions and reviewing all the opinions. It was in my division. They did create a tax division, which was a bit of a misnomer because they did a lot of regulatory work and did a lot of other things too. And that's when they started dividing it into the different divisions along the way. And each division had a deputy. And but yeah, one time I was just working really hard, and I thought I had the flu, and so I know I had a case to argue in the state Supreme Court the next day. So I went up to the clinic and they checked my blood pressure, and it was so high that they took me out to Baptist Hospital in one of the highway patrol cars. And
did you argue the case the next day?
No,
Somebody else did it?
We put it off.
Oh, you put it off.
And but I'd had some high blood pressure, and that's what it was. I got them medication, and I started walking a lot and lost some weight, and I was fine, but it was a lot of stress.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were days. I remember one day I argued 3 cases in the state Supreme Court, 3 civil cases.
Wow.
One time, just one right after another. So it was that kind of stuff you were dealing with. But anyhow, that was
Well, now I'm going to ask you about some of your interesting cases, and just specifically about being in front of the General Sessions and then the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, that was a case I had. It was I think it was 1984, I believe, and I'd been asked to argue the case in the Supreme Court by the Attorney General. I didn't try the suit, but it was a tax case, it was a bank tax case. Memphis Bank and Trust versus Garner, who was I think he was maybe the tax collector in Memphis. They collected the taxes, but they attacked the constitutionality of it under the Commerce Clause. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And I remember that the week of the Supreme Court argument, that Monday, I had to go to Memphis. And I had, it was about 20 student loan default cases where we had to get a judgment. It was in General Sessions Court. So I was in Memphis on Monday, and most of them were default judgments. And It was on a Monday, and Wednesday I was arguing that case in the United States Supreme Court.
Well, I don't know, you do know that later, they used to make you moot court them and do all sorts of stuff. Was there moot courting back then?
I didn't notice any. It was just you took the case and I argued it, and that's all I did. I had to really research the
Yeah,
cases.
so it changed a bit. It
Yeah,
got
it
very,
changed a bit, but
yeah.
you get something, a few weeks before the argument up there, you gotta put some time into it, read the record and
Yeah,
all that. But anyhow, that's the kind of thing that happened. But yeah, I had a lot of different cases over the years. One time I counted, I argued over 100 cases in the appellate courts, most of them in Tennessee Supreme Court. But I did Sixth Circuit court cases and did a lot of federal litigation, some class action stuff and all that. And a lot of these cases, I'd go all over the state of Tennessee because a lot of the jurisdictions, especially for tax cases, was in Chancery and in, at the county of the taxpayer.
Mhm. There's something about the Magna Carta.
Yeah, that's another story.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, this was in 1988, I believe, and it was the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights. And the Tennessee State Museum had gotten a contract with whoever had the Bill of Rights. I can't remember who it was, and also one of the copies of the Magna Carta. They contracted with somebody in Britain, in England. And they were supposed to deliver it to us, so the Tennessee State Museum could have a copy of the original Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta. Well, at the same time, I think in Philadelphia, there was a committee, I think a congressional committee, that had wanted to have all that in Philadelphia on display. And they were, damned and determined to get it. And right before it was those documents were supposed to be sent to Nashville, they were having it was a college, a small college in the Bronx, Lehman, I think Lehman College, I believe was the name of it. And we were at some kind of dinner, I believe. I forget what the event was, but Mike Cody was Attorney General. He came up and asked me the evening before if I would go up there and try to, get those documents. And Diane Dykus, who was in our office, she had done some work on it too. And she had gotten a restraining order from a judge in the Bronx from those documents being removed. And so we flew up there on a state plane and landed in New Jersey. I believe it was Teitelbaum, something like that. And the New Jersey Highway Patrol met us. And they took us to this college. It was myself and Diane, and I believe there was maybe a TBI officer with us. He wasn't in uniform. And there were some people from the museum, curators, that knew how to handle these things and package them so they could be delivered. So we went up there, and it was dusk. I remember when we got to the college, and there was this, it looked like a mobile home. It was right out near the campus. And I guess it was for students could come and go through it and see all this. And there was a crowd out there. And so we walked over and we said, we're here to get it. And they said, no, we're not gonna let you have it. There was some fellow was on the New York City Council. So he called out the police, the New York police. And there was a whole bunch of them came, and they had, they looked rough. They did. They were there for business. And so there we were. And so we started negotiating with them in one of the classrooms. And before long, the bishop, or I forget what his title was, from England that had the Magna Carta, he came up in a car or with some other people. And they were getting ready to take it to Philadelphia. Some of the representatives of the Philadelphia Commission and the councilman. And they brought the New York police to make sure they got that. So, I remember one time in these discussions, one of the New Jersey Highway Patrol came in and said, looks like they're gonna move that van, this mobile, home van, and, do you want me to shoot out the tires? I said, no, I don't think we want to do that. But the whole time I was in communication with, Mike Cody, the Attorney General, and I think he was in communication with Ned McWhirter, who was the governor at that time. And, so I went out and we had this injunction or restraining order, I guess it was a restraining order in my pocket. And I told the guy, I said, you know, are you gonna move it if I had a restraining order against you moving it? And his mouth just fell open.
Oh, so you had the restraining order?
Yeah, we had the restraining order against them,
Right, who gave it to you?
a judge in the Bronx.
Oh, okay.
We had employed a firm up there to lay it out and get the injunction, and then they gave it to us. And so his mouth just wide open, and eventually they backed off because they didn't want to violate the restraining order. And we had the contract. I mean, by right, we should have had it. So we were up there, and I bet it was hours, early morning. You know, we were there all night long and early morning. So finally we got it. And so Diane and these curators, they were going to fly back on commercial through LaGuardia. And I decided I was just going to fly back on the state plane with some of the other Tennessee people. So that's what I did. But as Diane told me, as they went through LaGuardia, the New York police, went with them and guarded them. And they had shotguns, and they actually took them on the plane and seated them. And then they got to Nashville. It got a lot of coverage in the newspaper, but it took me a while to recover from that. But we were successful against a lot of odds. But it was fairly tense. Fairly tense.
Great story. Now, there was one about choose life and pro-life.
Yeah, that was the license plate case, late nineties or maybe 2000, somewhere right there. But the legislature had passed one of these license plates where it said you could buy it, you know, you pay $30 extra or whatever,
Right.
and it said choose life. And the other side, pro-choice, they were upset that the legislature wouldn't let them have a license.
Mm.
And so they filed a lawsuit against the state. And the Attorney General, Paul Summers, I believe, asked me to handle the case. And which I did. It was in federal court. And it might have been Judge Wiseman, I can't remember. But anyhow, we lost in the trial court. It was a First Amendment. I mean, this was a law school textbook case. You know, is it government speech or is it private speech? You know, is it private speech when somebody puts it on their car, or is it government speech because of the legislation? And of course, they were arguing it was private speech and personal speech, so therefore it violated the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And the trial court ruled against us. And so I appealed it to the Sixth Circuit.
Wait, the trial court moved against the state.
Ruled against the state,
Okay.
right. And so I appealed it to the Sixth Circuit. And usually the Sixth Circuit, I believe it's 15 minutes you had for each side. It's pretty quick. But they waived it for this case. So you know they felt it was really important. So I argued the case, and I bet it was at least 30 minutes or more, because I was getting a lot of questions from the judge's panel. And I answered them as best I could. And we got an opinion that reversed the district court, which said it was government speech. So therefore, it was not violating the First Amendment.
And I think you told me the ACLU was the plaintiff.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I've had a lot of cases. They said you.
oh, really?
know,
And then there was a John Ford bribery case in the 90s.
Well, that was probably in the early 2000s. It was some questions about whether Senator Ford from Memphis had some improper dealings with some specific legislation dealing, I believe it was with dental insurance somehow. All these run together after a while, but
Right.
anyhow, somebody had filed an ethics complaint against him. And apparently something had come up in another piece of litigation. I think it was a domestic litigation in Memphis, where he had produced some of his tax forms, and there was this odd income that he was putting on there. So, of course, the Senate, they really wanted an investigation on it, because if they found that it was improper, they would have had a hearing to whether or not he should be ousted from his seat. And so there was a lot of senators that were really wanting the Attorney General's office to investigate it and decide, whether there was any kind of problems with it. So Paul Summers, the Attorney General, asked me to get involved, and I, along with 2 or 3 other people, because there was a lot of investigation to do. I think we interviewed 50-something people, and that had any connection at all with some of these pieces of legislation. And we wrote a summary of it. And one thing that really stood out was we had asked for all of their documents. And their client, I forget who their client was now, but and we got all that. It was boxes and boxes of stuff. And I remember going through every bit of it personally. And I did find one memo that was more of it was really a smoking gun, really. But
Yeah.
they had overlooked it, the law firm. They didn't
Right.
realize it was in there. So we had that, and I drew up I didn't say specifically, that this was, but I just laid out what the facts were. And it was up to the Senate to decide whether or not they wanted to proceed, which I think they were going to do. And I just knew if they did, I'd be the one involved in the hearing up there. But apparently the federal U.S. attorney had gotten on to it also. I didn't know they were involved in it. And right after our summaries came out, they charged Senator Ford. And of course, he hadn't resigned yet, but he did finally resign, so I didn't have to have a hearing. But he did get convicted. And I think he served some time in Texas penitentiary. It was a U.S. penitentiary.
Oh, federal.
Texas, yeah, federal.
Yeah.
But I remember I took his. It really wasn't a deposition. It was just sort of you'd go to each one of these individuals, and and I'd have somebody with me, and they would write down a summary of what they said, and that was what we were using. And I did question Senator Ford quite a few, a lot of questions, and so that was pretty. It got a lot of attention. Of course, the Senate was very. They wanted something quick, and it took a long time to go through all that stuff and talk to people, and we just had a few months to do it.
So what was the smoking gun memo? What did it say?
It was a memo about a meeting they had with him.
And it talked about bribery or what?
Well, it did use that word.
Yeah.
But it was pretty much.
This is what they want for the money that
Well, it wasn't. It was more of a malfeasance, maybe. I wouldn't. But we never made any recommendations to the Senate as to it. I just wrote, what we had found factually, and. But anyhow, that was an interesting case. But I did a lot of railroad. This is federal litigation, property tax with railroads and utilities. It's one of those cases that just goes on and on. And we tried cases in Jackson, Tennessee, in the district court there, and here in Nashville.
Now, what do you mean by, they were challenging the property tax? What do you mean
Well,
by?
The public utilities such as the railroads and airlines and truck lines, uh, their valuation was fixed by the Public Service Commission.
Uh,
And all other commercial type property, the local tax assessor determined the value.
oh,
And in a lot of counties, the values were not up to fair market value. And they took the position that it was a discriminatory and equal protection, I believe, too, that
so the local entities would increase the value more than they were, so they get more taxation? Is that what you're saying?
no, the local assessor would tax local commercial. Once the Public Service Commission put a value on it, they would send that to the local counties.
Uh-huh.
And then the counties would apply their local tax rate. And it's pretty, there were some federal statutes involved in it too. It's a fairly complicated case and it was, some major litigation and we tried, we won and actually we won in Nashville and we won in Jackson on that case. And I think they appealed it. And in the interim, the legislature had changed the law. So then you had a whole nother round of litigation over this. But this kind of litigation went on for 20 years.
Oh,
I mean, it was, and then there were other side issues involved too, other than that main, which had to go through the courts, but it was fairly complicated. And I worked on that for a long time. Did some eminent domain cases, for the highways and stuff like that. And a lot of tax.
now I didn't write down, are there any other interesting cases that you were involved in? Because we could talk about, your life after law.
Well, I remember one was an insurance receivership case. It was Tennessee Mutual Insurance. And this was Hayes Cooney and I tried that. This was back in the late 70s, I believe, and or early 80s. And it was this insurance company, wrote a lot of automobile insurance.
I'm sorry?
They wrote a lot of automobile insurance in
mhm.
Tennessee. And what they were doing, they would take in the premiums and they would keep it. And when there was an automobile accident, they just pay it out of there. And eventually, of course, it was caught up where, they just didn't have.
So these are just the insurance agents
Yeah,
or,
agents.
they never sent,
But they had they had an insurance company. It's called Tennessee Mutual Insurance Company.
Right.
And they ran it.
right.
But there was a lot of stuff going on with it, but we tried that. I think Hayes and I were in two different chancery courts, Chancellor High and can't remember the other chancellor was involved in it, but anyhow, we eventually got receivership of it, of the company and basically liquidated it. And some of the people that had insurance, had claims were never fully compensated. But that was an interesting case. All these cases got a lot of publicity at the time over the years. Let's see what else. Of course, I wrote a lot of attorney general opinions, did a lot of state licensing board stuff. I tried some personal injury cases. Bill Carpenter, which is unusual for attorney general's office, to have a jury trial for a personal injury case.
Wait, somebody had sued a state employee?
Well, they'd sued it was a case, it was about, now, of course, you have to go to the claims commission.
Right.
But there was some disagreement as to whether the state could be sued in certain instances in state court, or they had to go to the claims commission. So this was a case where there were a lot of defendants.
Oh,
And it was tried at Springfield. And it was a Bill Carpenter and I tried that case. It was a jury trial. And there was this couple, there's a weigh station, I believe, in Robertson County where the trucks have to pull over and be weighed, the long
right.
semis. And there was a couple that was driving, I believe, Ohio, and they were going to Sun City, Florida for their retirement. and they were coming through Tennessee. And I believe it was a bright sunny day, and there was a sign that said, truck weigh station ahead. And they were just going down the road, and there were so many trucks lined up that some of the trucks were sticking out over the highway. And they ran into the back of one of those things and killed them. And so their state sued the state, the trucking company. They sued the state for, I think maybe it was negligent design, something like that. I believe that was the basis. And we tried that, and I remember we had offered, before we made final arguments, we had offered, I offered $50,000 to the plaintiffs. Of course, they were suing for millions.
50,000 for each?
I think that was total.
Yeah.
And they rejected it. And so final arguments were made, jury was charged, and took them a couple of hours, and they'd come back and found the state was not negligent.
What about the trucks? Did they?
I think they got off too. It was
Oh,
basically negligent for the, I think what the
that was back when there was comparative fault.
Yeah.
And so if there's any negligence
Yeah.
on their part,
Yeah,
there's no judgment.
I think they found there was some negligence on the
Yeah.
part of it, because they had not observed that for
Right,
some reason,
right.
but that was a real interesting case. And it took us over a week to try that thing. And I tried a lot of cases, a lot of some of these jail overcrowding cases. It was a
Oh, with
thing.
Gordon Bonneman?
No, this was in Memphis where
Oh.
these were going on, and I had a case down there, and one of the district judge was Julia
Gibbons.
Gibbons. I had gone to high school with her.
Oh, really? In Pulaski?
Yeah, her name was Julia Floyd Smith. Everybody called her Julia Floyd, and her mother was an algebra teacher, and she taught me algebra. So I got to visit her son, but we tried the case, and I believe they found the state at fault, because the local jails were getting overcrowded, and the state couldn't take them because they didn't have any place to put them.
Right.
And of course, that was why the state was included. And but that litigation, I was one attorney, but there were a lot of other attorneys involved in those cases in other jurisdictions at that time. But those were interesting cases.
Okay. Can you think of any other? Because we got a lot to do for your post legal life.
Yeah, well, let's see here. Yeah, there was one case where I think, and this was tried in Memphis also, in federal court. It was a case where I believe there wasn't sufficient compensation to the attorneys that were representing indigent criminal defendants. And they had filed a suit to mandate for the state to pay it. And we tried that, and won that case though in Memphis, won that one. But there's just over the years,
Yeah, lots of
of cases, and they all have some interest, of
Right.
course, to the litigants, very important,
Right.
but it was interesting, and I enjoyed most of it. It was very
Well, what do you think that
stressful at times.
the practice of law has changed since the beginning till the end?
Yeah, it changed. First of all, there are a lot more lawyers.
Right.
And back when I first started practicing, got licensed in '74 when I graduated from law school, there was more of a camaraderie, I thought, among lawyers. Most of them sort of knew each other pretty well, and that was when I was in private practice. And so I got to know a lot of people, and you sort of knew whose word you could trust and whose you couldn't trust. And it was really a profession, but I think over the years, I think it sort of evolved into more of a business than a profession. And you just had to be a lot more cautious with who you dealt with. And how you would, deal with things and record things, that conversations and things like that that you didn't before. But and the discovery too, really. There were a lot of lawyers back then that, before you had the new rules of discovery, they would just pick up the file and go to the courthouse and try the case. There wasn't a lot of discovery. But now, I mean, that's an industry, almost, discovery. And you get in litigation and there's lots of discovery, either documents or individuals. And it was just more and more work to get a case to where it should be.
I remember this story, I think it was in circuit court, where one of the old timey lawyers, I won't say his name, and it was domestic, and he'd call the witnesses and say, "What do you know about this case?"
Yeah. And it was a different era, man. It really was.
Yeah.
But it's changed. There've been some good things too. When I first started practicing law, there were very few women.
Mhm.
Nancy Corley, who I practiced with at Stevenson, Lackey, and Holman, she was one of the few female attorneys. And in my law school class, I bet out of 150 people, there were less than 10 were women. And of course, now I think it's over half.
50%, yeah.
And I saw that at the law school. I taught at the Nashville School of Law from 1976 to 2017.
And what did you teach there?
41 years. Originally I taught legal research and writing for about 15 years. Rick Humbrack and I taught that. And then I taught, later on, I taught accounting for lawyers, which dealt with, it wasn't bookkeeping, it was more like financial statements and how in litigation, things come up and financial ratios and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I also taught state and local taxation, which I've done a lot of work in. And I remember when, right after I moved to the Attorney General's office, J.G. Lackey, who was the dean of the law school at that time, he called me up and asked me to teach the course in legal research and writing. And so I did, and pretty much taught exactly what I had at Vanderbilt. You used the same textbook and used my same notes and all that.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, you had to grade, problems and grade them and all that kind of stuff. But I did enjoy teaching. I really did. But I was going to say, when I first started, there weren't a lot of women students.
It was Rebecca Thomas. Did you know her?
I knew her, but she was she was one of the early.
Right.
But we had Carol Solomon right in that group too, I think. I remember Carol came, I think she graduated, but she came and sat in one of my legal research and writing classes. Some of them would come and sort of audit it. But by the time I decided to quit teaching, I'd say half or more than half the students were female women.
Right.
And it really, it was just a real change in the profession. You could see that.
And now, your life that has nothing to do with law.
Okay.
What's this story about the Appalachian Trail?
Well, a friend of mine and I decided we were going to hike the Appalachian Trail in the mid-90s. So Jerry Shelton was his name. He practiced law with John Lyle and Jack Seaman and Henry Hale for a while.
Uh-huh.
They were in the Renaissance building. He did a lot of property tax work. He had been executive director of the Assessment Appeals Commission,
Of the what?
Assessment Appeals Division of the state. And he was a good friend of mine, so we started hiking it. We would go twice a year and hike for a week or so. Section hiking, they call that. It's about 2,200 miles long. It goes from the southern terminus is in Georgia, North Georgia, and the northern terminus is Mount Katahdin up in Maine. And it goes through some pretty wild country. Place you wouldn't go to most of these little towns unless you were doing something like this. So we hiked it for several years, and we did hike all the way from Georgia up to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is a little over halfway. So we hiked, I'd say at least 1,200 miles. And we enjoyed it. I mean, it was something.
So are you
different.
still hiking?
No, he started having some knee problems,
Yeah.
and he had retired from practicing law, and he had moved back to take care of his mother in Missouri. And so when she passed away, he moved to Florida. And so he was my hiking buddy. You know, he didn't hike because he'd gotten
Yeah.
a bad
Do you think
knee.
you could still hike?
I think I probably could, but one thing I did do, I got ruined my feet on that. You know, you get I've always having foot problems. But some of that is just really, just totally where you just don't feel like you can take another step, and it's not all a walk in the woods. I mean, some of it is straight. Some place I can remember going up a mountain on my hands and knees. It was
Ooh.
that steep. And you walk some of these little ledges, and there's not, but some of them not any wider than, I don't know, a foot and a half. And you got a drop off here. And so we got some cane staffs that we use, some canes, and put a lot of duct tape on it and all. And we would go to a place, and we'd go to a little hotel somewhere near the trail, and that was our headquarters. And then every day for about a week to 10 days, we would position our cars at spots on the trail. You know, I had a map of the trail, and we'd hike. We usually do at least 10 miles a day. You know, and then I remember one time we grew up in Maryland, did 20 miles, and that just about killed me, killed us. But it was interesting to see some of these places and see it was beautiful scenery, of course. And it was just we saw bears
Ooh.
on the trail. I remember one night we were sleeping in one of these lean-tos. They have like it's a lean-to is what I call it.
Right.
About every 10 or 12 miles where hikers can stay and sleep. And it's got one side is open and three sides covered, or walls. So we were sitting there, we could hear there were a bunch of wild boar out in the woods scurrying around. We could hear that, but anyhow, it was. I figured if we could hike that trail, we must be in pretty good. Our heart must be in pretty good shape. But you'd see all kinds of people on it. I've seen nuns hiking the Appalachian Trail,
Huh?
and then you see groups of people, and then
Did they have their outfits on?
No, they had something on. I think she had said she had finished nun school or whatever seminary for nuns in Wisconsin or Minnesota, and before she. I don't know if she'd taken her vows or not, but she decided she was going to walk the trail and by herself. But she was an interesting person to talk to, lady to talk to. And then you get some people. Some of them run that trail. I don't know how in the world. I mean, so many rocks and roots. I'd fall and break.
Well, they're a lot younger.
Some of them weren't. There were some people that were
Older.
Yeah.
Ooh. Now, what about hunting doves?
Yeah,
You said something about that.
I don't do as much hunting now as I used to, but I used to go dove hunting usually around Labor Day in September. That's about when the season opens. And a good friend of mine, Martin Geiner, he and I would always go dove hunting. And sometimes David Weed would join us. And we'd go to places around, not too far from Nashville, Williamson County or Wilson County, just different places. And we also we'd do some deer hunting. And we'd go down to my farm near Pulaski, and we'd hunt deer down there. And then we did some goose hunting, did a lot of goose hunting, especially David and I would. And in fact, I've got a stuffed goose in the house that I shot over near New Johnsonville. And duck hunting, we did a lot of duck hunting over in Tiptonville, over in West Tennessee, near the lake. That big lake. Reelfoot Lake, yeah. We did a lot of duck hunting over there. Even did some boar hunting up in.
Did you get some boar?
No, the thing about boar is they hunt you too.
Right.
So it's not. But I did see some, but it didn't have any luck, but it was over, somewhere over near Overton County, I think, over in the woods, and it's in the woods. So
And
I did.
Wild turkey, there was something you told,
Did some wild turkey hunting, yeah, did some of that. Then did a lot of fishing too.
where'd you fish?
Well, we had,
Is this the same people?
Martin was, and David, sometimes we'd be together, but then there was another group that went with us. There was 3 or 4 other guys that we knew real well, but Martin was always with me. And Martin's an attorney, and I think he's retired too, but we would always go crappie fishing.
Go where? Crawfish?
Crappie, in springtime, usually it's the best time, late April, right when it first starts getting a little warm. And we'd go over there every year, and we would really catch a bunch of crappie. I mean, we had a bunch, and we'd get
Are
them.
they good eating?
Oh, they're the best.
Oh,
Crappie, to me, is the best fish.
they don't sell it at the store, do they?
No. But it is, and snapper, I'd say those two are my red snapper, which is a saltwater fish.
Uh-huh.
But we would just get a bunch of them, and we'd have them cleaned. You know, they'd clean them for you on the dock for a fee. And then we'd freeze them and bring them home. And I'd have crappie in my freezer all year, and I'd take some out, and it's just so tasty and sweet. It's just the best. I think the best fish you can get. And then we did some deep sea fishing off the coast of Florida. Used to go down there at least once a year, and we would catch snapper and mackerel, and let's see what else we caught. We always seem like we always end up catching a shark of some kind.
Oh, then do you put the shark back in?
No, we didn't eat the shark.
No, I mean, do you release the shark?
Yeah, we threw it back in.
Yeah,
Whatever the we would have to charter a boat,
yeah.
and whatever the captain wanted to do. Sometimes they take it in. Sometimes they have rodeo. They call it shark rodeo, where you go out and whoever catches the heaviest shark wins the prize.
Oh.
It's like seeing bass turn, except it's shark.
Uh-huh.
And we never participated in it, but we saw, a lot of the people come back and dock. But we'd always catch a bunch of fish, and we'd bring them back, and we'd have a fish fry every year with what we had. And one thing I remember about fishing, you've heard of flying fish?
Yes, I see them on the internet.
I've seen them on the water.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that jump into the boat.
Yeah, they'll just, you look out and they just flying over the water, and they'll fly. Yeah,
And they hurt people in the boat. Is this the one
sometimes,
in the
yeah.
lakes here that?
No, that's a different,
Oh.
that's it's some kind of carp, I believe.
Yes,
No, this is just salt water. You see, they got little wings.
yeah,
They're not all that big, at least the ones I saw, maybe about that long.
uh-huh.
And you just see them coming out of the water, and they got little wings on the side. They
Oh.
just fly, and then they'll land.
Oh, no, I haven't seen them.
It's really a neat thing, but that stands out for. But we did a lot of fishing, hunting and all that, which, that was fun at the time. I don't do it because a lot of the friends I used to go to, some of them have died. And then for some reason or another, they really can't get out and do it.
Yeah, as a friend of mine said, the problem of having too many birthdays.
That's right, yeah. But
Okay,
it was fun, and
Another one of your interests is history.
yes.
And when you were at my house, are you the one that identified my late husband's?
Civil War rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I looked it up on the internet, and it was interesting. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you tell us about your history interest. What is your specific history interest?
Well, I'd say mainly probably Civil War, because I've got a lot of Civil War books, but I like just history in general. In fact, I just finished reading Samuel Pepys' diary. If you've ever heard of it, it was a diary this fellow wrote.
He's English, right?
Yeah, in the 1600s.
P-E-P-E.
P-E-P-Y-S.
Oh,
Pepys.
yeah, okay.
And he wrote a diary, which, it's sort of a classical thing. And he wrote about the fire, the Great Fire of London in the 1600s, as well as one of the epidemics that came through there. But it was really interesting. And So I'll probably read another Civil War book this after I've finished it, but yeah, I've got a lot of Revolutionary War history and even ancient history. I took a lot of Latin when I was in high school, and I learned a lot about the Romans, especially in Latin over it. But I love history.
Okay, tell me about the Killer Angels.
That was a guy written by last guy's last name was Shara, Shaara, and he'd written this book. It was made into a movie in the early '90s called Gettysburg, which I think is a great movie. And I've got copies of it.
It's about Gettysburg, during the Gettysburg
battle.
battle during the Civil
I had
War.
some of my people were there with some of the Alabama units that were there.
Did they survive?
Yeah, they did. I think there was one of them though. He was a distant. I guess he'd have been maybe an uncle of mine, and was shot and killed at Devil's Den. He was, I've got a book that somebody records saying he got shot in the stomach. And back then, even now, if you get shot in the stomach, it's almost there's nothing they do for you.
Yeah.
But he got killed there. But
So what do you do every July?
well, not every July,
Oh.
but I occasionally pull that movie out and watch it just to refresh my memory.
You watch the movie,
Yeah,
right?
in fact, there were 3 Tennessee regiments there, 1st, 2nd, and 14th, and they were in Pickett's Charge, the famous charge. And they were from Wilson County, Sumner County, and Clarksville, and also down around Winchester and Fayetteville area was where those soldiers were from. Somehow they were 3 regiments, 1st, 7th, and 14th. And not many of them ever came home.
Mm.
So I think in Giles County, I think I'd read somewhere where my dad's people where they had 1,200 Confederate soldiers, and I think maybe 200 of them came back.
From Giles County?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So it was a horrible war. But I had relatives. I guess that's what my interest is, and I heard hear stories growing up from family people.
Well, let's see now. Is there anything?
Well, I work some on the farm.
Oh, yeah. What do you do on the farm? This is in Giles County, right?
Giles County, yeah. It's I have a guy that I let him run his cattle on it, but he bush hogs for me and keeps my fences up. There's an old house down there. I've worked on some. I hadn't been down there in a while, just stuff I've been busy with. But that's where we used to do a lot of hunting, and it's sort of a getaway. It's real quiet down there. And, but anyhow, but yeah, I don't do it. I don't raise any crops or anything, but it's mostly
Right.
cattle down there.
Do you rent any of it out to people who would raise crops?
No, like I say, the guy that lives right next to me, he has pastured some of his cows there. So I don't charge him for it, but he does. He bush hogs all of it, cuts all the bushes and weeds down, and then keeps the fences up.
Mm.
Which is, I probably could rent it out for more, but
Yeah.
I know him, and he helps me with that. But
I didn't ask you about your family life, your nuclear family.
Oh yeah, well, I was married once in 1969. Her name was Debbie, and we were married 15 years. I had 2 girls. My Betsy was born while I was in law school, and Katie was born later, a couple of years later. And Betsy was a student at Tulane. She was a junior, and there was a carbon monoxide accident, and she'd gone down there for New Year's Eve in 1993, and she didn't make it back. So that just about killed me. But I had my Katie, my other daughter. That kept me going, I guess.
So I asked you, I said, how long ago was you got divorced?
I think it was 84.
84. And I said, why didn't you get married again? You said, well, I'm not the marrying type, something like that.
No, I'm just, I don't know, I guess I'm just particular, maybe, but I've seen a lot of friends of mine who've been married 3 times, 4 times. And, I was thinking about my girls, I was
Yeah.
raising them, and you start combining and families, and, it's just, I guess that's one of the main reasons I just, wanted to.
But you did tell me you'd had girlfriends.
Yes, I've had girlfriends. Yeah, I've had girlfriends.
Well, is there anything else in your notes that you want to talk about?
Let's see,
Now, and I know you're a witness to the streaking incident, but you don't want to talk about it. That's fine.
oh, that's when, yeah, at our law school graduation, not graduation, but the Jack Daniels trip.
Yeah.
I'll let somebody else talk about that, because well, some of my classmates, that are here in Nashville, or who have worked here in Nashville, or Victor Johnson, Torrey,
Uh-huh.
my classmate, Dick Lodge, and Jim Hofstetter, Ed Powell, Lee Barfield, Mike Franks, Jim Martin, Bill Kelly, and many others, Ed Powell,
Yeah.
a bunch of, I think there were several in my class. Most of the class, they would go to other cities, all over the country, big cities. But I think there was an unusually large number, maybe 16 or 20 so, that stayed in this area,
Uh-huh.
when they graduated.
Yeah.
And I'm just an old Tennessean. I wouldn't survive in New York City. I know I've been to New York City. I've had some cases up there. I guess I should have mentioned that when we were talking about cases, but it was a case where there was a nursery in one county in Tennessee, and this guy had ordered some plants from this nursery, and he lived in New York City. And when he got the package, they were all dead. So he wasn't going to pay for them. And somehow the nursery owner got the DA to sue the guy
Uh-huh.
criminally, and they got a conviction. And they sent a warrant, forwarded to, I forget what they even call that, to New York to arrest this guy. And on Father's Day, they got into his house, and the New York police arrested him and hauled him off to jail. Of course, that made him mad. He filed a lawsuit, alleging, I think it was based on civil rights. I'm not sure exactly what, but so I had to go up there in federal district court. I believe it was in Queens.
Are you representing the ADA?
Represent the state of
Yeah.
Tennessee. Yeah. I was representing the district attorney general.
Right.
Yeah, that was what.
Yeah.
So, and I had filed a motion to dismiss for forum non-convenience. I thought it was improper
Uh-huh.
venue for that case. It should be brought in Tennessee.
But they arrested him up there.
They did, right. But transaction occurred in Tennessee. I mean, that was what some of the particulars, but I do remember going up there, and there was this judge. She was a female judge, very attractive, had the reddest lipstick, but she was tough. I mean, she chewed me out, chewed the other side out, and she drug us back in her chambers and said, y'all gonna settle this. And we did, and I think we gave the guy maybe $10,000, something like that, and settled it.
Uh-huh.
So that's what happened, but that was interesting. No, I've enjoyed the answering. It brought back a lot of memories, Rebecca. Some of this stuff I hadn't thought about in years, but it's been practicing law was, I really enjoyed it. Sometimes at times it gets pretty stressful, and it does take a lot of time and a lot of commitment. It's not the avocation for somebody that's mentally lazy. I mean,
Would you do it again if you had the choice?
If it was, I think it's changed so much now than what it used to be.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure, although I would have gone to law school. I think that's one of the best educations you can have. But the legal profession is a very noble profession, and it's got some of the people of the highest integrity involved. I know, of course, a lot of people have a bad image of attorneys, but from what I've seen, most of them are people of high character and integrity, and they're good advocates for their client. And if I was 25, yeah, I might practice now, but when you're
Well, what
70
about being a history professor? Would you have preferred to do that?
That's what I thought. That's what I would have loved to have done. But I didn't think you could make much of a living doing that. And but I had a good mind for, accounting and for law too. I enjoyed it. And you see a lot of human nature practicing law that you never see, in a lot of other professions. And
My husband was a doctor and he said they see the best side of people and lawyers see the worst.
that's exactly right. It's easy to get jaded if you're not careful, and it's hard, I think, especially now for people to maintain a balance between their private life and their professional life, because, when you're practicing law, I mean, it's not 24 hours, but, there are times when you're working 24 hours. You get trying a lawsuit that lasts for a week, you're doing a lot of work, and it's just hard to be two places at one time, but it's a very noble profession. I'm glad that I did it, enjoyed it, and it's been very rewarding for me in the long run.
Is there anything else you want to say, Jimmy?
I think that's all I can say. I'm sure there's a billion other things I could talk about. I think you've covered the bases well, Rebecca, and I'm honored that you would ask me to. But I did get the 50-year award from the Nashville Bar,
Uh-huh.
and I'm a Nashville Bar Foundation member too. So I guess I've been a member of the bar since 74, something like that.
Uh-huh. Well, good. Well, it was great doing you, Jimmy. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, Rebecca,
Bye.
good to chat with you.